Thank you for auditing the Always Positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who threw up a poll on his community tab. If you're subscribed, you will have seen it. Please do subscribe. And I wanted to review one of the two great new soul R&B albums. Now, I don't really know what has happened to soul music or R&B music. I'm trying to figure that out through this channel. But I gave a choice to my viewers, Don Toliver or James Blake. And James Blake received probably 150 more votes. So here we are, I'm going to review James Blake. But before I do, I have to address a problem that I had. I didn't really know who he was. Or to be more specific, I thought he was somebody else. I love, in this channel, examining my own ignorance and the nature of ignorance itself. I do consider myself to be a smart guy. I do have a doctorate, all that stuff. I really am a French professor of French, to be clear. But just like anybody else, I have my misconceptions and I have my stupid assumptions that I take as real. And it reminds me of when I was a kid. When you're a kid, you just sort of believe certain things and you don't check in with adults and you don't think to check in whether or not they're correct. I was positive that when I was a kid, I was positive that belly buttons were integral to how babies were made. I just thought that was how it went. And it wasn't until way too long later in health class that I discovered that wasn't the case, right? And in particular, when I was younger, though, one of my favorite misconceptions were just mixing up famous people just because their names were similar to me or their position in society was similar to me, or just randomly because I just didn't see the difference. Most famously, when I was younger, I thought that Bob Hope and the Pope were the same person. If you're younger than 80, you don't know who one of those people are. Bob Hope was a famous old white-haired comedian. The Pope is a famous old white-haired priest. And it's actually not that weird that I confused them. Another one was Howie Mandel, the comedian, and Barry Manilow, the singer. Still to this day, I have to think very hard to be able to say both of their names in a sentence. Which then brings up James Blake. It turns out, and I discovered this week, okay? Now, to be clear, I want to make this clear. I have a successful, minorly successful YouTube channel. More successful than I ever thought it would be, but in the scheme of YouTube, it's a minorly successful YouTube channel. On that channel, I try to talk about music at a very high level. That doesn't mean that I'm not a complete dummy, okay? So in between 2002 and 2018, I was totally asleep to music. I didn't pay attention to anything, virtually anything, okay? It's only been these last 3 years I've really been invested in what's happening in new music. So it's not too surprising then that when I kept seeing the name James Blake, I confused it with James Blunt, okay? B-L, James, B-L. The only difference is U-N-T versus A-K-E. Who can fault me for that? So this really confused me, because if you don't remember who James Blunt is, he had a one-hit wonder, "You're Beautiful." It's one of those terrible, terrible songs, my least favorite kind of songs, that is a love song written to women so that they have a false sense of being appreciated by a stranger because they don't feel enough appreciation in their life, right? I think we need to work on making sure people feel appreciated and seen in life and not leave it up to teeny bopper singers, not leave it up to people like James Blunt to tell you how you're beautiful, how your body's a wonderland, how nobody knows you're beautiful, all that stuff. So I hated this song. Now, mind you, this is in between 2002, 2018, so my knowledge of music is just in passing. I saw the song on Saturday Night Live, I'd hear it while I was shopping, Wegmans or whatever. I just kind of hear the song. But when I heard it, I just hated it so much. So when all of a sudden, I start getting back into music, and even before, I start seeing this name, James Blake. And I just thought, James Blake, James Blunt. So you have to imagine my surprise when 444 comes out. Now this is still when I'm Rip Van Winkle, I'm still asleep to music, but I like Jay-Z enough that I listen to 444, and I'm like, oh my God, the You're Beautiful guy's on there? Kendrick Lamar was a big enough deal that I paid a little bit of attention to what he was doing, and Kendrick Lamar was also working with the guy who did You're Beautiful? Beyonce is? This led up to last week, where I just said, I guess I was wrong about James Blunt. I guess this guy is this super genius who just released a really lame song and then ended up being a great guy. It turns out they're two different guys. And I don't know, maybe James Blunt is a super genius. I haven't followed up. It was only when I was researching for this video and clicked on James Blake and looked for most popular songs, expecting to see You're Beautiful and not finding it there, that I realized there was a different guy. So this has been a great experience for me because over the past couple years since I've done this channel, I've loved whenever I've heard who I thought was James Blunt. You know, on the Slow Tie album, on the Dave album, he pops up all over the place in a lot of very interesting hip hop and soul projects, okay? So the fact that I was freed from this weight of liking the You're a Beautiful guy allows me to really appreciate who James Blake is. And this album is so good, I haven't even reviewed it yet, and I bought the CD, okay? I bought this at the Record Archive. If you want to see the story of how I bought this, join my Patreon. You can see me buy it. Goat and I went and had a day at the record store. It was quite fun. Bought this and Sons of Kemet. And that Velvet Underground cover. Okay? So, that's how much I like this album. I went from thinking he's the You're Beautiful guy to driving down to the Record Archive to buying a copy of his Renee Magritte inspired cover album. Okay? That's what I did. Why did I buy this album? Who is James Blake? He is just gorgeous. And I don't mean physically. Maybe he's gorgeous. I don't know. But his voice, that's just the word that comes up. It's just gorgeous. His voice is just gorgeous. It is heartbreakingly beautiful. He has range, talent, and taste. So like, to have a lot of range is impressive. To be able to change modes, which he's able to do. He's able to sing sort of sounding tired, sing energetic, sing love songs, sing up high, sing down low. If you have all those things and no taste, it's just wasted. This is why I think shows like American Idol are so dangerous to music. It's not just that they're, turning art into a game. It's that they prioritize vocal acrobatics and gymnastics and turning singing into a trick. James Blake shows the same way that all of my favorite singers can. At the very top of that list, Harry Nilsson, okay, before the Lost Weekend, Just to be able to have such range and beauty and taste is a very special thing. And I need to buy the album partly because I just wanted to play it. I just wanted to hear it. I wanted to share it with my daughter who's taking voice lessons. I want to share it with my wife who loves Andrew Bird and I think has kind of a similar taste. I mean, much more range, but similar taste, And the thing is, it's not just that he sings well, but he also knows how to produce himself, it turns out, to do production tricks or production moves that make his voice even more interesting. So that all these modes are used very well and very intentionally. And I think that production element is a thing which makes him even more interesting. That he's not just a singer, he's also a producer. He co-produces all the songs on this album. And he's produced in the past. So we have this real creative guy who has this real gift and who's using it in such an interesting way. If we go back to the Harry Nilsson analogy, Harry Nilsson wrote his own songs and wrote songs for other people. Although, of course, he got famous doing covers. That's a weird coincidence. Still, the ability to give yourself the platform to show off your voice is a very special and vanishing talent these days, right? For the most part, people rely on other producers to showcase their talents. He doesn't do that. Also, there's a great video, I'll put it in the description, about the history of dubstep and how it came to be hated and how it was loved. It's one of my favorite videos on YouTube. And in it, it mentions that James Blake was one of the pioneers of dubstep, which makes a lot more sense than James Blunt, which is what I thought when I watched the video. You're beautiful. And beyond that, beyond the voice, beyond the production, he also has great lyrics, They're not unbelievable lyrics. I'm not going to be sitting here telling you I'm just tearing out my hair because he's such a beautiful lyricist, but he is more than competent. And the album is pretty consistently themed around life-changing moments, around losing friends, around what appears to be a long-distance relationship that's failing, a lot about the effort that it takes to love people, about the disappointment in people who don't love you enough, and ultimately an overwhelming sense of isolation, which you get very much in here. Is it a COVID album? I don't know. How do we determine what makes a COVID album? The themes are not overtly COVID, but with isolation being one of the primary themes, I think in a similar way that it's hard to determine what is a 9/11 album, right? It's not just Proud to Be an American and The Rising, right? The fear and the sense of loss is very pervasive in post 9/11 music. I think what we're going to see here is just an explosion of isolation music. And what you want with an isolation album is a beautiful voice, right? You want that more than you want beautiful instrumentation, because the voice is the one thing you can do by yourself, right? Nothing feels as lonely as a beautiful voice alone. One is the loneliest number. So mixed in with all this is the fact that this masterful production is also pretty dynamic, right? So he's using these lyrics and he's doing this production, and the production is often hip-hop adjacent, but never quite fully hip-hop. It's R&B adjacent, but not fully R&B. It's very pop, but it's never kind of like catchy and stupid. It's this great mixture that reminds you all the way across everything. Who is James Blake? He's a very tasteful musician who has production mastery at his hands in multiple genres and uses it well, creates tasteful, excellent lyrics, and sings excellently and tastefully. So let me give you an example of this great album by James James Blake, with the opening track. Okay, that's going to be my homework, my stamp for the video. That means you listen to it and come back. I'll be telling you why I like it so much. I'll put a link to it up there. Go there, check it out. Please come back. It's good for my metrics if you finish the video. Plus, I'm going to say a bunch of cool stuff. Okay? So opening track is called Famous Last Words. Now, production-wise, it's got this nice kind of arpeggiated synthesizer, very sparse, that lonely feeling, beautiful like low bass, almost like basso continuo, you know, in Baroque music. Eventually it gets a little bit more lush with strings in the background, but as this album is when it's at its best, it is just a bed for his voice. His voice is the main production element here. And that's I mean, this is the problem about me describing his voice to you. I could just say it's gorgeous and then stop, right? But it's more than that. It's the way he employs his range. It's the way he sings the following lines. I've truly lost it this time. You could do a super mix of every time he sings I truly lost it this time, and the subtle differences that are in there. The amount of like subtle differences that he puts into his delivery of each line, it is just awesome. I also like the way he plays with accents. It's funny because he has a very noticeable British accent for the most part, in particular with a word like can't, right? Whereas in America we'd say can't. Rochester, where I am, they'd say can't. But I can't believe, like it's very much can't. But then like the way he says words like crimes in this song is very American, and even reminded me a fair amount of Bill Withers, which I would say his voice often reminds me of Bill Withers, not so much the way it sounds, but the way that it feels. As far as I'm concerned, there is no higher compliment than Bill Withers, as far as vocals go, right? I don't think there's ever been a better vocalist emotionally than Bill Withers. And at times, when James Blake is at his best, he reaches that level, that Bill Withers level of just goosebumps, unbelievable, this is so good. I'm going to go over the rest of the album now. Next track is Life Is Not the Same. Gets a lot more R&B here, a little bit less techno, experimental, kind of a standard R&B drum track, kind of strained hi-hat line. The vocals remind me even a little bit of Tom York of Radiohead at times. You know, like there is a sort of alternative, avant-garde tinge to it. And in particular, there's this really high sound that sounds like voices, but isn't. It's actually a keyboard, and really reminds me of something off of, I don't know, In Rainbows or Amnesiac or some kind of Radiohead project, that kind of detail. And he's able just to do so many different styles of singing in this song. Like, he even goes up super high and says, "Why'd you go?" And the way he does, it just sounds completely different from everything that came before. It sounds like it could be a totally different singer, right? And then here, it talks about this long-distance relationship, which I think is continuing on from the previous song. It seems to be, you know, it's not the same if you're miles away. And then at the end, the voice even reminds me a little bit of Sade, who I've started to love. I used to hate Sade growing up, but the Dr. and Mrs., my wife, she really likes Sade. So that's turns out pretty good vocalist as well. Okay, but that's it. Hey, who is James Blake? A person who I think you could realistically compare to Bill Withers, Tom York, and Sade within 5 minutes of music. That's pretty high compliment. Next song is called Coming Back with SZA. Very dramatic music. I don't know if this is on purpose. This reminds me of Prokofiev. You know, the Prokofiev, the Russian composer. He has a song called Tanz der Ritter, or Dancer of the Nights. You know the song, but I'm not singing it very well. It sounds to me in the beginning, it has a kind of epic, like clashing feel to it. And he sings over it very nicely. And then he does a great thing, or he and the co-producer do a great thing, where they change the beat for SZA. And this beat change is something a little bit more standard R&B, hip-hop sounding, just goes beautifully. And then leads into almost a Timbaland style, like funk break. And I don't know SZA very well either, but I can tell you these two voices just go absolutely beautifully together. Like all three of these songs that lead off the album, I would say could be considered the best song on the album. The next track is Funeral. Now this is where I don't like it as much as the first three, but it's very gentle. It's almost no music. It really is mostly voice. And he has this, I've listened to it, I don't know, 6-7 times now. And he like harmonizes with himself at this certain point. And the voice is so high. Is it really him? I think it probably is, but it is just astounding. These are maybe my favorite lyrics on the album, even though it's not my favorite song. I hold my ear to a shell. I hear something that no one can sell. So, like this kind of concept of nature and emotion and the things that transcend our physical existence. And then he says, I would live in the leaves that crunch under your feet. And it happened to be, I was listening to this with my daughter in the car while we were driving around. And she was like, oh my God, yes! Oh, crunchy leaves are the best. And it's fall. It's fall here in Rochester. And so there's a lot of crunchy leaves about. And so we spent the rest of the day like walking around talking about how good this lyric is, It's silly. It's almost corny. I want to be the leaves that crunch under your feet. But also, that's a really sweet thing to say. Like, I want someone to tell me they want to be the leaves that crunch under my feet, Like that's a beautiful line. And then he follows that kind of corny line with a very deep line. I want to be heard if I can't be seen. No, that's not what he says. That was autocorrect. So I don't have a script, I have notes. And on my notes, it autocorrected to, I want to be heard. He actually says, I want to be held if I can't be seen, which is much more important and much more interesting line. Next song is called Frozen, and this is where he shows, okay, fine, let's do a hip-hop song. I sort of wish he would do a whole hip-hop album. Maybe he has in the past. Oh yeah, I always forgot to do this. Seeing as I've been ignoring James Blake because I thought he was James Blunt for the past 3 years, what other James Blake project should I be listening to? Because this is really cool, because it has these kind of boopy sounds, kind of hip-hop sounds. It's all about kind of being frozen, being cold, being isolated, cool kind of plucked bass lines, do, do, like a stand-up bass, plucked notes, do, 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 and then a very sparingly used sound effect in the back at just the right time. It's great. And his voice goes beautifully over it, which then leads into the first verse by J.I.D. Okay, J.I.D., great verse. Switches a flow halfway through. He's able to do just amazing things. When the drums come in and the flow switches and he has these different voices, J.I.D., this is one of the best guest appearances on any album this year, except for one thing, J.I.D. You need to work on your geography. As you may or may not know, as you should be able to tell if you know who that person is behind me, my wife is from the country that was known as Yugoslavia, is now known as Serbia. Serbia is not Siberia. Serbia is not that cold of a place. Rochester is colder than Serbia. It's kind of a continental climate, Serbia. And it's understandable that you mixed up Serbia and Siberia. When I went on my first date with my wife, I had to quickly look up to make sure that they were two different places, okay? So J.I.D., I'm not blaming you, okay? This is a very understandable thing, okay? I'm exaggerating a little bit. I knew they were different places, but So he makes this line about getting hypothermia, hyperbole, I'm in Serbia. And it's just kind of funny because my poor wife, and if you know any Serbians, you will discover that like when they come to this country, it's very weird because the first question is it very cold there? And I was like, I guess. It's not like a defining feature. You'd probably be more aware of the time that, our country bombed them and all that stuff. Sort of more pressing issues than the weather. And eventually my wife came to realize, oh, they think it's Siberia. So anyways, That's my only little beef with JID there. But frankly, the verse is so good, doesn't really matter. Then the great little interlude with James Blake singing, a little bit less drums, that then leads into Suave's verse. I really like his verse. He kind of talks about, he puts himself forward as an unreliable narrator, saying a bunch of things that he did or maybe didn't, and maybe he's crazy, maybe he's not. It's great. I'm So Blessed You're Mine is a bit confusing. There's a couple songs on this album that are love songs. So it seems like a lot of this album is about like being frozen and isolated and things are bad and I can't trust my friends. And then there's these couple other songs that are so much like, I'm so glad you're mine, I'm so blessed you're mine. But it's a nice love song, and in particular, I love the chorus. There's kind of another beat switch into the chorus, and this has, again, a couple times I'm reminded of Timbaland's production, kind of cool, idiosyncratic, chopped up, funky sounding, futuristic sounding beats from Timbaland from the late 90s, just in the background with just, I'm so blessed you're mine, I'm so blessed you're mine, just this line repeating over and over again. Very catchy and agreeable. Foot Forward, probably my least favorite track on the album, but I still like it a fair amount. It's co-produced by Metro Boomin, which is cool, having like a real hip-hop producer on here with James Blake, who of course is a real hip-hop producer, but he's also this weird soul dubstep guy. I'm going back to this question, who is James Blake? Like, what is his genre? He's a soul guy? Pop guy? Hip-hop guy? British guy? James Blunt guy? Ed Sheeran guy? I don't think so. I think he's his own thing, right? But still, having Metro Boomin, somebody who's only known as a southern hip-hop producer, it's nice having him here. The whole song, I would say, is really saved by just the range that you hear in his voice. And again, you just have to take a little bit of time. You have to take some time to listen and just appreciate what this guy is doing with his voice. There is, and this happens a couple times, snaps. Please stop. Just stop. We've all got to stop with the snapping. It was okay for a while. There's two reasons why I'm traumatized by snapping. One, I had way too much exposure to a cappella music in college, so that meant that I had to watch a lot of guys singing and snapping like that. Not my favorite thing. And then the other one is just, what's happened to country music where they use like trap beats and snapping. So when I hear snapping, I get taken out of a song immediately. I immediately start thinking of bad pop country songs that I get exposed to whenever I visit my brother in West Virginia, right? Like when I'm at the Sheets getting gas, I hear these songs, and it's all like all the love songs, these kind of slow songs with these kind of snaps, and I just don't like it. Next song, Show Me with Monica Martin, has a cool kind of weird Alvin and the Chipmunks, super high up range in the beginning. He sings in a kind of tired voice, which is nice. And this is, again, like, is this a love album or is this a breakup album? Like, which is this? Because this whole song is like, show me this love. The next person gets to be the fresh start. I get to be the casualty. There's not a small amount of emo tinge to this album as well. Kind of self-pitying, sitting alone in a room, like, I've been so wronged, But nice kind of cello element with some, nice cello at the end, which is nice. Say What You Will is another weird song. It's sort of like I was a loser, but now I'm cool. More emo lyrics, like people were nice to me, but only because I could help them. And sort of like talking about being an unliked high school loser, which is hard when you're like a popular singer, Again, a little more snapping here, points deducted for the snapping. The harpsichord kind of comes in later, harpsichord song comes on, but this song basically ends up being sort of soft rock. Next song is called Lost Angel Nights. Okay, now when I saw the title, I was like, what in the sloppy steaks is this going to be? If this is going to be, I am so sick of people writing songs about Los Angeles that plays with the fact that Los Angeles sounds like Lost Angels, okay? It's just a tired thing. Fortunately, the song itself doesn't lean super hard into that. This just feels to me to probably be another one of these long-distance relationships. The sounds, though, it's cool because it actually sounds like there's amount of resolution to this song that makes it sound like a graduation song. So I am a professor, and I have to go to graduation every year, which means my least favorite song in the world is We Didn't Start the Fire. Number 2 is Wonderful Tonight. But number 3 is the graduation song, Pomp and Circumstance. Holy cow, am I sick of that song. I have to hear that song every year. And and then my kids keep graduating, and my nephews and nieces keep graduating. I never get rid of that song. This song, I think, would actually fit really nicely in there, because it has that kind of procession feel, nice kind of resolution there. Beautiful harmony on the chorus. He does this neat trick with the production. Again, it's worth mentioning that the fact that he knows how to produce means he knows how to produce himself as well, okay? Where he like harmonizes with himself in a really high register, but it's kind of far away. It's a really nice subtle thing. And then when it comes to talking about Los Angeles, the line, "envy is no crime," is a perfect line about Los Angeles. That is an interesting lyric about Los Angeles. Envy is no crime. Okay, Los Angeles is a city of envy. Okay. Then we get to "Friends That Break Your Heart," kind of a guitar-led, reminds me a little bit of like "Stairway to Heaven" by Led Zeppelin, but without the "come on down the road," you know. But I love the chorus. "In the end, it was friends." Very sparse, very nice, very much reminds me, again, of a sort of pre-Lost Weekend Harry Nilsson. I don't know how. I don't know. I just don't know how this song is so nice and so haunting and so beautiful and doing so much of what I hear in modern R&B, but just doing it so cleanly and so nice. It is interesting that he's talking about friendship, and this is sort of a weird... You're 25 minutes into this video, so just let me riff, okay? I'm just going to go out on a theory here. A music theory, okay? Friendship is a major theme of 21st century music. Much more than love, I think. I think that social media has changed the nature of friendship. I think that fame and the amount of people who attain a certain amount of fame, skyrocketing, has changed friendship to where people feel a lot less secure in their friendships. Friendships feel a lot more general, a lot more insincere, a lot easier to use people for friendship. It's always been easy to use people for friendship, but it's easier now than it was then before. I think the fact that Drake is the most popular musician in the world is partly because his main theme is about friends that he can't trust. I think there's something that really resonates with people about not being able to trust your friends, right? Now, I personally can trust my friends because I don't have very many, right? Like, people who I consider friends, if I know I can't trust them, I don't become friends with them. But I think in this modern age, this guy, James Blake, is 11 years younger than me, so it must be an interesting thing. And I think that somebody else who's not me could do an entire overview of the nature of friendship and the way it's presented in pop music and hip-hop music. And we can really see from the teens on this 21st century reconfiguring of friendship. End of tangent. I am a professor. I do go on a lot of tangents. The last song is called "If I'm Insecure." Beautiful low synthesizer bed just for a whole series of "if I'm this, then why that? If I'm happy, why am I insomniac? If I'm an only child, why am I the black sheep?" Kind of a cheesy setup for lyrics, but it actually really works. And this is something that he does quite well throughout the album. He has a premise, which if you told me the premise, I'd go, I don't know, James. I don't think you're going to be able to pull that off. If I'm this, then why that? I mean, that's kind of fill in the blank. We want sentence length answers on this exam here, James. We don't want just if this, then that. But it happens to be that the if this, then that are good enough, are interesting enough, are engaging enough, right? That it makes up for the weakness of the premise, right? Like, if I'm an only child, why am I a black sheep? That's a great line, right? Like that just goes into your head and stays with you there. And then it leads into the chorus, which continues this theme, but builds on it. It's basically a church chorus with this great church organ. And he says, "If I'm so insecure, why do I know that I'll be there for you until I am no more?" So a beautiful love song. The whole album ends on this love song. I don't know, is this the same person? I don't follow the love life of James Blake. I don't know if he's singing to a woman or a man. I don't know if it's a famous person or a not famous person, or if it's the same person in every song, I don't know. Maybe this is a new love or something. But whatever it is, this is a very beautiful love song. A lot of the isolation and loneliness that we feel from the rest of the album, we're not getting here because of just how you're in this like church of love in this song with this organ playing. And I want to talk about his lyrics too. So he's a British guy, right? And often British, the stereotype that Americans have of English people is that they speak more fancily than we do, right? More fancier. And this is a great example of not doing that, of choosing the right words. Because with the sound of the church organ and the grandness of this song, I think you'd probably say, if I'm so insecure, why do I know that I will be there for you forever and evermore? Right? Doesn't ever, forever and evermore, doesn't that sound more like what you'd imagine like a British singer to do? But instead it's until I am no more. It's actually sort of a dark thing because it brings up death, right? And instead of being a kind of cheesy love song that's just kind of, again, filling in the blanks, it's a nice turn on these lyrics. It's just a small detail, but I think it shows the strength of James Blake's lyrics. One thing I like about the production on here is by the time the chorus comes back, we have this church sound, but then this insane keyboard doing these really high arpeggios comes in over the old style organ, and the album ends. And it's one of those albums where, you know, while I'm listening in the car and I'm sitting there, I'm just excited for it because, you know, when you get down here, it's going to start back up again, and you just get to listen to it all over again. So there's my answer. Who is James Blake? He's a great singer and songwriter. He's not that other guy. This is my weekend show, so this is where I always show off my Patreons. If you don't know, I bought this, but I didn't spend my money. No, I didn't spend my money. Because the way my Patreons support me is they help me buy music. Whenever I can, I buy it from a local record store, and I buy new music to make sure I am supporting the artists who I'm talking about here. This channel is about supporting art. That's why I don't do any negative reviews. You're not going to hear me come on here and just blasting how bad something is. It's fun, it's entertaining, but it's not what this channel's about. So thank you to these people who give me money so I can support artists. And if you're on the Patreon, you know, you get lots of like exclusive videos and stuff like that. I think I'm a good Patreon guy. I don't know. Maybe my Patreons can tell other people if I'm a good Patreon guy or not. So thank you to all these people. I know it should be alphabetical, but I just add them as I see them. I think one person's on here who stopped getting money this month, so, but it's okay. If you gave me any money, like, we're cool. Okay, well, until next time, you heard a little bit of a sound there. My kitchen is being redone, so there's this weird, like, plastic rattling that you may hear from time to time. So the videos may be a little weird for the next month or so, but there you go. All right, till next time, there's the camera.